Hi folks, it's Tim Kitchen here from Adobe, and it is wonderful to be presenting this webinar titled Simple Yet Powerful Podcasting with Adobe Podcast. Thank you for joining this weekly webinar series from the ANZ Adobe Education Team. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We honour the wisdom, knowledge and artistic expressions that Indigenous communities have shared with the world. Their contributions to the arts and education continue to inspire and enrich our lives. Through creativity and education, we strive to build a future where all voices are heard and celebrated. Whether you're just getting started or looking to deepen your skills, these sessions aim to provide hands-on tips, classroom examples, and expert insights to help teachers make the most of Adobe's powerful creativity tools. Now it's over to the Adobe Education Team. The question that I had for people who are with us live is what experience have you had with podcasting? I'm just having a look in the chat now. And Jerry, I'll get you to open up your mic and tell us what have you seen come in yet so far as responses?
There's a few responses here, a few shares. So we've got one here that says, yep, limited podcast experience. And yeah, very little actually. Most of the people that's actually commented, Tim.
Yeah, I'm just looking through some of them now.
And they haven't, and someone's commented they haven't actually used podcasts. So actually, yeah, very few.
That's very new. And it looks like no one's actually used Adobe Podcast too, which is great. So it's good for me to know that. So I'll make sure this is really going to the basics of it. The good news is that Adobe Podcast, a bit like Adobe Express, it's really simple. It's really easy. And it's not going to be very hard to show you how to use Adobe Podcast with your students. But what I'll do, because we've got about 40 minutes left, is we'll probably spend about 20 minutes looking at Adobe Podcast. And then I'll spend 10 minutes showing you Adobe Audition, which is the professional podcasting tool from Adobe. And just to give you a taste of that, because you hit a ceiling pretty quickly with Adobe Podcast. And so it's good for you to know that there are ways of breaking through that ceiling. Let's start, though, by talking about podcasting in general. So what is a podcast? Well, I'm glad you asked. A podcast is a digital audio, and some people say it can be a video as well. And there's a bit of discrepancy there as to whether a podcast includes video or whether that should be called a vodcast. We're probably not going to go into that debate. I have my own thoughts on it. I tend to think that a podcast is traditionally an audio file. An audio file that is made available on the internet for downloading or for streaming. Typically, podcasts are episodes of a series that are released on a regular basis. So why create podcasts in education? Because I'm sure we've all experienced them in the professional world. Podcasting is a creative way to help students think deeply about a topic, reflect and present their learnings. It's a fun way to engage and interact with virtually any unit of work. Students and teachers can create podcasts without needing expensive equipment or steep learning curves. Podcasts that teachers make can be available on demand at any time, so they're very accessible to students and other teachers. Podcasts can be used to supplement classroom instruction or as a standalone learning tool. They can be integrated into a variety of teaching methods, such as flipped learning classrooms, blended learning classrooms, or online courses. Teachers can create podcasts without needing expensive equipment. I think I've already mentioned that. Or steep learning curves. I don't know why I mentioned that twice, but maybe we'll try to emphasize the fact that it is not that difficult to do a podcast, especially when it comes to working with a tool like Adobe Podcast, because it's just such a simple tool to work with. Now, this is what Adobe Podcast looks like. And if you go to the link that I've got there on the screen, and Jerry, if you're still with us, I'll get you. Oh, he's already put the link in there. And we're going to go live into this app. It is a browser-based tool. So it's podcast.adobe.com. And those of you who are used to using Adobe Express, very similar way we use express.adobe.com, but this is podcast. www.adobe.com. So I'm going to jump in live. I'll just stop that full presentation. I'm using the Adobe Express slides to do my slides for this session. I'm going to bring across Adobe Podcast, and feel free to ask questions as we're going through, and Jerry or Tim will interrupt me if they think it's appropriate with any important questions. I want to show you a couple of things. Adobe Podcast is not just a podcast recording studio. One thing that I actually have used a few times is the enhance speech section within Adobe Podcast. I'm loving this because what you can do is you can actually record a voiceover or do a quick recording on any device at all with any microphone, like even if it's just the cheap microphone on your cheap laptop or it's just on your phone. As long as you've got the audio file of what you've recorded, then you can enhance that speech, that recording, by entering it in. So I'm going to jump into that section. If we chose that particular audio file and brought it into where it says choose files, then it brings in some noise reduction filters, it lessens the echo. It actually turns your cheap microphone into a really good quality studio type experience by using the software. So it's using the best of Adobe Audition without needing to know about Adobe Audition in terms of cleaning up and making your tinny sounding recording, making it sound really good. So that's one cool feature about Adobe Podcast before we even start the podcast recording section. So that's called the enhanced speech section. But most commonly, we've got record a podcast, start recording. This goes into the podcast studio. And when you click on start recording, you can go into literally the start recording section and it'll open up the studio. And this is what it looks like. So it's very simple. All I need to do now is hit that record button down the bottom left-hand corner and it'll start recording. But what it does, it doesn't record like a lot of other audio recording software where you can then go and cut and paste with a razor blade and put it all together. It actually transcribes everything that you're saying. So the editing process is more like doing word processing than doing audio recording. So it's a little bit more intuitive than a product like, say, Adobe Audition or GarageBand or some of the other tools that are out there like Audacity and some of the other audio recording tools. This one is a little bit more intuitive in that way. Now, I like to have a script when I'm doing, at least when I'm doing the introductions to my podcasts. And so I've got a script already in mind and I've got it sitting on my other screen. So I'm going to use that script to start my recording. I'm just going to record a little bit at a time, little chunks at a time. But before I start my first chunk of voiceover recording, I want to throw in some music, a nice little introduction theme to my podcast. So up the top left and in the side here, we've got a bunch of tools. The music tool gives us access to some royalty-free music. You could add in your music, but you've got to be very careful here to make sure you're not breaching copyright. You need to make sure that any music that you're adding to your podcast is royalty-free, that it's music that you have the rights to use. Now, if you've created the music with GarageBand or another tool, that's fine. That's royalty-free. But if you're grabbing a Taylor Swift song or a Billie Eilish song and thinking that you can then add it to your podcast, that's not good. And this becomes a good teachable moment for you and your students to think what's appropriate in terms of adding music, which is why we've got a whole lot of royalty-free music here. But also in Adobe Express, my goodness, there are thousands and thousands of audio files sitting there in Adobe stock via Adobe Express that you can download and then upload through your music that are royalty free. But it's much simpler. And I've just been playing with this theme called Heatwave. I'm loving some of the music in here. So I've gone into the Heatwave category and I'm going to choose the intro short. I'm just going to preview it first. So it gives me a sense. It goes for 8 seconds. And Jerry, just let me know if you're hearing that music okay. Just give me a confirmation on that.
It's coming in through, Tim, loud and clear.
Good. I'm glad it's working. So I'm going to hit the plus symbol that's right next to that play button. And what that's going to do is going to throw in that short MP3 audio file into the start of my recording. And down on the timeline here, if I hit the play button, the music started, there's my little intro, and it's fading away. And then if I start recording from this point on, and this little dot, this is called the playhead. So this dot is at the 7-second mark. We're going to reorganize that in a minute, but right now I'm going to record the opening to my podcast, my opening dialogue. So I'm going to click the record button. It's now recording, and I usually do a 3, 2, 1 intro. So I'll go 3, 2, 1. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning and teaching. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. And I'm going to stop recording. So everything that I've just recorded is now going into the studio and it's starting to be transcribed. Even the parts that I don't want anymore. Now, because I'm running Microsoft Teams at the moment and I've got a few other applications on, it might take a little bit longer than it normally does, but it shouldn't take too long. It looks like I needed to click the transcribe button to just prompt it. So that should come up soon and we'll start seeing the text. Even while we're waiting for that to come up, I can go ahead and just preview. It's now recording, and I usually do a 3, 2, 1 intro. So I'll go 3, 2, 1. Welcome to EduPod. Now, obviously, while I'm waiting for it to transcribe, and it's taking a little bit longer than it should, then I'll be able to start the editing process when I see the words. Now, I must admit to you, I'm an Adobe Audition user, so I do get a bit frustrated with Adobe Podcast because even though it's incredibly intuitive, it's a browser tool. And with browser tools, sometimes there are issues. Like it's even telling me now I can't transcribe it for whatever reason, probably because I've got so many different resources that I'm running at the moment. So I'm going to give that another go. But while we're waiting for that to transcribe, I'm going to go up to the music and I'm going to click the little sliding tool that's sitting up here in the top right-hand corner. And by clicking that, I've got a few options here. I could fade in the music, which I'll do that because it's always nice to have a fade in. I don't need to fade out because it already does fade out, but this option here called set as background is worth noting because what happens now when I click on that, it actually brings the music into my dialogue. So it becomes the background to the audio. So now if I take the playhead back to the start, and I'm just padding a little bit here, hoping that it will transcribe really quickly, which is a bit annoying that it's not. And I'm going to hit here we go. Now it's transcribing. That's good. I'm just going to hit the play button so you get a sense of what the background is like. It's now recording, and I usually do a 3, 2, 1 intro. So I'll go 3, 2, 1. Did you hear the music in the background? So you can see how now it's not just an intro at the start. Now it could be if I go back to that setting tool, I can make sure it's not set as background, then it just becomes a bit of music at the start. But I'm going to keep it as background, and now I'm going to do some editing now that the transcription has actually happened. So I'm literally going to select all the parts that I don't want. So up to the 3, 2, 1, welcome to. So up to the welcome, I'm just going to literally delete that section, and that's how we do the editing in Adobe Podcast. Now that I've done that, let's see what this sounds like. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning and teaching. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. I'm going to stop. I want you to notice the little dots that appear. Every time there's a little dot, and if you look really closely, you can see a tiny little dot there between education and I'm. That tells me that there is a gap in the recording. So I can use that dot and delete it, and that gets rid of the gap. In this case, I actually want to get rid of that dialogue as well because I don't want to have that there. So now I've just left everything that is supposed to be there. I'm not liking the music that is, and the fact that I faded it in, I think is one of the reasons why it was so soft. I don't like it as a background, so I'm going to make it not a background and just see what this sounds like now. If I take my playhead back to the start of the timeline. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning and teaching. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. And then usually when I've started a podcast like this, or if I'm teaching students how to do this, well, I'd encourage them after their opening statement, their little introduction to whatever the podcast is about, to throw in another stinger or another bit of music. So I'm going to go back to my music tool, and I could, it's probably best to stick with the same theme, which was heat wave. And this time, instead of I could put the same music in, I could put a transition in, it'll be slightly different. 6 seconds of short transition might be appropriate. So I'll add that, and I'm a bit worried that I've added that over the word education. So I'm going to undo and just make sure my playhead is right at the very end. That's where it gets a little bit tricky, right at the very end of the timeline. And then I'm going to add that music. So I'm going back to Heatwave, and I'll go to transitions and short and add it. That's looking better. Otherwise, I'd probably be deleting the word education. So now if I take the playhead back a little bit, maybe up to that second sentence, then hit the play button, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. All right, so that's showing you the basics. And now, if you are an Adobe Audition user or an Adobe Premiere Pro user, you're probably sensing some of the frustration that I'm having too, because you don't necessarily have as much control over every little element. Like in Adobe Audition or Premiere Pro, you can go frame by frame, and you can actually control every bit of volume. You want it up at a certain point, down at a certain point. You've got no limit to what you can do with Adobe Audition or Premiere Pro. With Adobe Podcast, it's designed to be a lot simpler, but with that, you actually don't have as much control. So you sort of weigh out the advantages and the disadvantages. Jerry, I've noticed there's a little bit of chat going on. Are you still with us there, mate?
Yes, it's all good.
Anything I need to address? Okay.
No, not for this podcast.
Excellent. Good. All right. So what I want to do is there's a reason why I'm using two microphones. Explore innovative ways to enhance learning, and it's very sensitive. I want you to listen back now to the dialogue and just listen to the quality of it. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways. It's okay. You get away with it. But I'm a fair distance away from my internal microphone on my laptop, which is sitting around about, 40 centimeters away from where I'm speaking. If I then go to this tool here on the left called the filters tool and activate the filters tool, and then click the enhance button, it's going to start analyzing the recording, and it's going to enhance the audio. So it's using that same tool that I talked about at the very start of the webinar, which is part of Adobe Podcast, the enhanced speech tool, and it's going to enhance. Now, hopefully you'll be able to tell the difference, because usually I can tell it quite well because I'm hearing it beautifully. But let's see if you can tell the difference as I now play it. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning. I'm just going to pause that. It is a dramatic difference from my perspective. Jerry, did it sound much different to you?
Tim, it was very clean and sharp.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear. Good. And that just shows you how good that enhanced speech filter is. Because even though I'm a good 40 centimeters away from my microphone, my internal laptop microphone, remember, I'm not using this mic for the podcast, I'm using this mic for the stream. It gets confusing. It has really enhanced it. That's a really good quality audio. And if I take it back to just as we start the intro music. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning. It's a really good quality podcast, and I'm really happy with that. It's almost as if I'm in a soundproof studio recording that. And when the kids see that in their classrooms and they realize they can get such a good quality audio, it's a bit of a game changer. It's really exciting for them. I'm going to have another go at making this intro a background by that little sliding tool. I'm not going to fade it this time. I'm just going to go set as background and just see if I get a slightly better introduction or a better experience. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning and teaching. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. Yeah, I'm in two minds. I'm sort of thinking it's best not to be as background. I would love to be able to control the audio because by setting its background, it's brought the volume down a little bit too low. If I was in Adobe Audition, I would have total control over that, but I don't in Adobe Podcast. So there are those slight little limits. Now that we've got our intro music, and I've just made that not a background now, and I've got my opening intro, and I've got my little stinger after that intro, I can just take my playhead now back to the end of that bit of music. And I can go on and continue the recording. If I've got it scripted, I can go ahead and read the script. Or what I could do is go over to the left-hand side and add a placeholder. The placeholder is designed, as we click on it, for you to start planning and thinking about what you might want at this point in time in your podcast. So you can do some annotations. Maybe at this point you're introducing a guest. You're not quite sure who that guest is yet at this point, so you're just sort of typing in some thoughts. So this really isn't necessarily what you'd use to finish off your podcast. It could be, or it could be a way of planning and laying out what your podcast or the structure of your podcast and how that's going to work. I'm going to delete that placeholder because I've already planned this out. And for some reason, it's doubled up my music there. So I'm going to delete that as well. And now I'm at the end of my track and I'm ready to record the next section. 3, 2, 1. Podcasting has become a powerful tool in the education landscape, offering numerous benefits for both students and educators. From fostering engagement to providing flexible learning opportunities, podcasts are revolutionizing the way we approach education. And I'll stop recording, allow that some time now to do its transcribing, and hopefully it'll be a little bit quicker than it was before. And we just keep building our podcast a little bit at a time. And that's the beauty of Adobe Podcast. And of course, if I did have a second guest, if I was going to interview and have a conversation with someone, I would need to probably have a second microphone or have them hover around the microphone that we're sharing together, and we could do that informally. But there's no limit really to what you can do because you've got this tool to work with. Let's see what this sounds like. I'm going to take the playhead back. I'll get rid of the 3, 2, 1. I've got a little gap there at the start too, so I'll just get rid of that. And I'll take it back to about halfway or just to the start of that music and just see what the transition's like between the two. Podcasting has become a powerful tool in the education landscape. Notice that it's kept the filter, it's added the filter automatically now, so the quality is really good. And what I can also do is I may have actually had my guest pre-record, or I've done an interview with my guest over my phone, or I've got a pre-recorded bit of audio that I want to bring in. If that's the case, and maybe this is the introduction to that interview, I can go over to the one button that I haven't showed you yet, and that's the upload button. And this is literally as it says. I'll take the playhead back to the start there. If I click upload, I can then go into my hard drive of my computer, choose whatever audio file, and I'm pretty sure it's just an MP3 audio file that it will read. It won't read a waveform, I don't think, or an AIF audio file. So make sure it is a MP3, which is a very common compressed audio file. And then you can bring that audio file in as part of your podcast a little bit at a time. And that's it, folks. That's just about it when it comes to actually building a podcast with Adobe Podcast. Once you've finished everything, you would want to export it. So you go up to the top center where it says export. So we're out of edit mode and now we're in export mode. You've got a few options here. One is to download it as an MP3 or a waveform. MP3 is the most common format. It is a compressed format, so it won't be as high quality, but it will be easy to upload and download, and it's very, very common for podcasting for you to export as an MP3. A waveform is a much higher quality, larger file, and if that's what you're looking for, you have that option. Animated transcript video audiogram. This is a relatively new feature, and I must admit, I haven't looked at that before. And it's probably best not to go into it now because I don't really know it, because it's a fairly new feature. So feel free to have a look at that in your own time. Transcript is pretty obvious. It's going to give you a full transcript of everything that you've recorded. Even if it's just a conversation, it'll transcript it all for you. And you can separate files for each participant. It looks like it's an advanced feature. I've got access to it, but it may not be part of everyone's version. This is a free product. And of course, in the K-12 world, you probably do have access to that, but that's quite good, where it'll separate the audio for each individual participant. That's pretty clever technology. So there you go, folks. That is Adobe Podcast. Now, Jerry, before I jump into Adobe Audition and just show some of the basics, is there anything in the chat that I need to address?
The one thing you can actually confirm, we had Chris actually asking if you're able to upload a file and edit. I do believe while I was doing a bit of a search, that might be possible.
Yeah,
here's the upload button.
Upload button, just like I said before, if you had pre-recorded something, you can upload it. And then once you've brought it in, it'll transcribe it, and then you can do the editing. So yes, absolutely. All right, so Adobe Podcast, very simple. It's very basic, but a lot of fun, and anyone can use it. Adobe Audition, on the other hand, I shouldn't put you off. When you first open it up, it does look a bit scary. So I'm just bringing Adobe Audition. I've just started a new project, and you can see it does look a bit scary because it's a professional tool. And I just want to show you some very basic ways of getting started with Adobe Audition, just in case you want to have a lot more control. So the first thing I'd always recommend is, if you're going to do a podcast in Adobe Audition, is you go to what's called multi-track mode up the top left-hand corner. And then give a session a title. I'll call it Podcast Sample 1. And I'll save it onto the desktop just for the sake of it. You can ignore everything else that's there, click OK. And now what you can see are the different layers, so we've got different tracks, track 1, track 2, track 3. There's, by default, what have we got? 6 tracks. And each of those tracks can be a separate component. Like this could be my voiceover, and then this one could be some music, and this one could be maybe the second person who's talking, maybe another soundtrack that's going in there, maybe a sound effect, a track or a layer for sound effects. You've got all of those controls to bring in. What I always recommend is that you jump into the settings and just check your audio hardware to make sure that it is connected to the correct microphone. So if I go to audio hardware, if I go to my inputs, I've got a range of different microphone options here. And for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to stick with my MacBook Pro mic, my built-in mic. I don't want to confuse things by adding this mic, because it might Teams might be wanting to hang on to what I've got here. So I don't want to throw my webinar. So I'm going to stick with that. But normally I would then, actually this one here is my professional mic. So that's what I would normally go to if I was going to do a proper decent voiceover recording or a podcast. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to stick with this internal microphone. You can also set your output. So if I was wearing headphones to monitor everything and listen back as I'm going, I'd choose which form of output. In this case, I'm just going to stick with my default, which is my Microsoft Teams audio, so that you can hear the output. Normally I'd go to my speakers or my headphones if I had them plugged in. So now that I've got my basic settings, the next option is to make sure on track 1, for instance, you've got the R highlighted and you've clicked R. R stands for recording. Just to let you know, the different symbols here, I'll just see if we can make that look a bit better. There we go. So we've got the M, which stands for mute, so you can just mute that track. The S, which stands for solo, which means you can just hear that track and no other tracks. R is for record. And the I don't really use the I. I'm just seeing if it comes up. Yeah, I've forgotten what the I does. Someone else might know in in the chat, but I don't use it, so I'm not going to worry about it. But the R means I'm now about to record into that track and that layer. Then I need to go down to this record button, and as I hit that record button, you can see it's starting to record. And you know it's recording because you can see the waveform. So I'll do the intro again. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning and teaching. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. And then I'd hit the stop button. And all of that has been recorded. This is the playhead, this red line. Take it back. You can probably hear it scrubbing backwards and scrubbing forwards. And if I hit my space bar button, you can see it's starting to record. And you know it's recording because you can see the wave. And Jerry, just confirm that you're hearing that back.
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So I'm just looking for the point where I'll go 3, 2, 1. And usually the waveform tells me. I can see a 3, 2, 1 just there. So I'll do the intro again. 3, 2, 1. So that's where I'd want to make an incision and cut. And up the top, we've got our basic tools. We've got our eraser tool, and I can go from my eraser tool, I can make a little cut at that point. And then I can go back to my pointer tool, and I can select the part that I don't want, delete it. And then I could just move this back to the start of the track, or I could do a right click in the gap and go ripple delete. Oops, ripple delete gap. That's it. And now it's automatically gone back to the start. So this should be the beginning. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance. Now, if I wanted some music to be in the background here, I'd be throwing in some music. And a quick way of doing that is just to drag and drop your file, and it will accept MP3, WAV, AIF, any file. So I'm going to quickly just find an audio file that I know is royalty free. And I've got a few options here. I'm just going to grab this MP3 and literally drag it up into layer 2 and then click OK. OK, so it's resampling it so that you can see the music is sitting there. Now, I predict that the music's going to be too loud. So if I hit the space bar, welcome to EduPod. Yeah, the music's way too loud. And so we've got a few options. I could bring the whole track music down. I've got 2 lines here. One line is for the panning left and right, and the other line is for the music. This white line is for the volume. I'll bring the volume right down, and this other line, I'm going to keep that centered so we've got equal balance on left and right channel. Let's see. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways. And if I wanted to fade it down, I would click on the line and then do another click and then raise it up. And you can see you've got total control now. So it's going to start a little bit louder and then it's going to bring itself down gradually. So that shows you the amount of control that you have. Welcome to EduPod, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to enhance learning and teaching. Today, we're diving into the exciting world of podcasting in education. And now I'd bring that volume up again. So bring it up to about there. So you can see after that bit of dialogue in education. And working with the music, as the music is changing, I would then maybe bring the volume down, probably down a little bit further, or even right down to off before I start the next bit of recording. So that's the idea of using Adobe Audition, where you have total control over all the elements, but it is a little bit more complicated than using Adobe Podcast. And once you've done it, like layer it bit by bit, it's like doing a jigsaw puzzle. You just do a little bit at a time. You can then go and export it. And to do the exporting, it's just a matter of going File and Export. And Export Multi-Track Mix Down is your option. And then click Entire Session. And you can give it a name and choose where you want the export to go. You can choose what file format you want to work with. And I might stick with MP3. There it is there. And then you click OK, and now that generates an MP3 file from what you've just been creating. So there's 2 ways of doing podcasting. One's with Adobe Podcast, which is very, very simple and intuitive, like a word processor. And the other way was with Adobe Audition, which is a bit more complicated, but is the industry standard tool. Jerry, did I see a hand up or a question?
No, there's just been a few comments, but all good, no questions.
Good. All right, we're just about to finish off the webinar now. So if you've got any questions, this is a good time to be asking them. And just a little story. The Adobe office in Melbourne is in the same building and on the same level as Triple M, Fox FM, and Listener Podcasting, which is probably Australia's leading podcasting network. Hamish and Andy, one of the most popular podcasters in Australia. That's where they do their recordings, and every so often we see celebrities near the Melbourne office. Sometimes when I go into the lift going up to that level or going down, if I'm wearing an Adobe branded top or a little Adobe badge on my jacket, I'll get someone who's from Listener or Triple M or Fox FM. They'll look at the logo and say, "Oh, you're at Adobe," and they'll probably say something like, "We love Adobe Audition." And I love these conversations with these professional audio engineers and presenters and artists. They use Adobe Audition all the time. It's their bread and butter. And so it is the industry standard tool for podcasting and even radio production. And I've got a niece who works on another radio network. She works in more of the accounts side as an account manager, but she knows all about Adobe Audition because they talk about it all the time. So there you go. When you're teaching Adobe Audition to your students, you're kind of getting them ready for industry in that way, which is the same with Photoshop, which is the same with Premiere Pro, same with InDesign. They are professional tools for professional people, but if you've got access to them at school, brilliant. You're really giving your kids a head start. Adobe Podcast, Adobe Express may not be professional tools, but they're a great way of just engaging your students to create podcasts in a fun and engaging way. Adobe Express is not necessarily a podcasting tool, but it does allow you to do vodcasts because it has a whole video side to it. And we've done many webinars on Adobe Express, and we'll be doing many more as we go. So we won't be touching that today. All right, folks, we've just got a little bit of housekeeping for you. I'll just take away that screen and bring back my Adobe Express slides just to let you know that this was the last of our series for this term. We start up again either on the 15th of October or the 22nd of October. I haven't decided which of those Wednesdays we're going to be doing our next one, but it will be on the new Adobe Express Classrooms feature, which is to be launched. It shouldn't be far away. It's been in America for over 12 months. It's now the rest of the world is going to get access to it very soon. So we're really looking forward to sharing that incredible collaborative resource as part of Adobe Express for K-12 users. So those of you in higher ed and TAFE, you don't have access to that, unfortunately, but for K-12 teachers, this is going to be a great webinar for you. So watch out and Jerry's got the link there in the chat, which is good. EduWed webinars -25, that is where to find more information about it when we get that published. This side here, and Jerry's going to put the link into the chat, this is a set of resources that we have for K-12 teachers, and I'm going to actually jump into the chat now and open up that resource, hopefully. It's coming up now on a different screen, so let me just bring it across because I do want to show you this. This is what it looks like live. You can see the weekly webinars is our first story. When you scroll down, we've got lots of on-demand tutorials that relate mainly focused on Adobe Express. Mind you, I think I do have an Adobe Podcast tutorial in there somewhere as well, but that's worth sharing with your students and colleagues. The ACE courses, we're running them regularly, almost on a weekly, if not every second week basis, where you can get your formal accreditation and become an Adobe Creative Educator Level 1, Level 2, and maybe as a professional learning goal for next year, become an ACE leader. More information about that is available there. Our newsletter, it was September edition, came out only a day or so ago. We're up to, usually it's the first week of September. I'm just going to click into there now so you can see what it looks like. And what you can see here is a link to our conference, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's a story about the conference. There's a story about last week's weekly webinar, which is where we got to meet John Penn, who's an amazing, incredible Adobe employee who helps law enforcement solve crimes using Adobe tools. It's an incredible story and is an amazing man. So we did a whole webinar on him last week. Adobe Max is coming up late in October, so a promo for Adobe Max. You can join for free online with millions of others. Otherwise, it's a very expensive trip to Los Angeles. Then we've got lots of different ideas. Most of these are from the Global Adobe Education Team, and I've got the best of their resources, and I usually do a story on the best of those resources to share with you. And then it's a conference for Victorian teachers. I think there's one or two other stories that we're going to be adding in this week that have just come up. So every so often we add things in, but usually we update this at the beginning of every month. Just jumping back to our resource, here's the conference, the ANZ Educators Conference. In fact, what I'll do, I've got a dedicated slide for this because it's such an important event. On the 2nd of October, we have our Adobe Educators Conference. It's for K-12 and higher ed, and all of the workshops are now available for you to register for. So you can choose your streams. There's a K-12 stream, there's a higher ed stream, there's a technical stream, there's a pro stream if you want to be just delving into the professional tools, or you can pick and choose any stream you want to at any time. They're all recorded as well. So if you register and you can't be there live, you will be sent the recording. So it's well worth registering even if you can't be there. The QR code is a great way of getting access to it. And Jerry's put the link in the chat. I'm just going to jump into it now as it opens up so you can see what I'm talking about. And I do encourage all of you to register for this event. It's during the school holidays for those of you in K-12. And as we scroll down, you can see the plan for the day, the different workshop options and times. A couple of great keynotes are already in plan. We've got Brett Salakis, who's keynoting the afternoon session for the K-12 keynote. He's always a highlight. As we scroll down, we can see you choose the opening plenary session with myself and Molly. You can register for that. Then you can choose which keynote you want to go to, the K-12 one or the higher ed one. Then you can scroll down and choose your workshops. Do you want to go to the K-12 workshop with Brett Kent, or do you want to go to the higher ed workshop? Do you want to go to the general workshop, which could be for higher ed or K-12? You choose your journey. If you choose multiple ones, that's fine. Then you can just decide which one you want to go to live. You'll be getting the recordings of the other ones. And we've got a whole day planned for you of professional learning on the 2nd of October. Very much looking forward to that event. Thank you for being part of this webinar from the ANZ Adobe Education Team. While you complete the feedback form via this QR code or link, note that this weekly webinar series is just one of a range of free events and resources managed by the ANZ Adobe Education Team. More information is available on the ANZ Adobe for Education site via adobeanzedu.com. And more specifically for K-12 teachers via adobe.ly/ANZ-K12-PL. Thanks again for being involved in this webinar. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. Keep being creative. Thanks everyone. I'll just stop sharing the screen. We will stop the recording as well in a second. But those of you watching the recording, thanks. Hopefully you can join us live next time. Jerry, thank you so much for helping to moderate this session. And thanks to all those people who did join us live. Please join us again for our next series next term. And as I stop the recording, happy to have a chat with those people who are with us live at the moment.